Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and I am back after a roughly 1 week hiatus with ButterComp2. Now here's why ButterComp2 is interesting. I've got the original version, and 2 has an additional output control, but I managed to improve it a little bit more and fix a bug. And I'll tell you all about how that works. Firstly, let me show you what ButterComp itself sounds like. I'll turn off 2, and we've got bit shift gain in here doing a -1 bit. That's a very high quality volume correction that's about 6 dB down so that you can hear me talk, because people get upset when the music is too loud, strangely, even though that's what I'm demonstrating. And I have ditherbox on the floating point bus doing a 24-bit dither because we're saving to 24-bit files. So here is empty pictures going into ButterComp. And you can hear that it steps on the output pretty hard. And it'll also do something if you turn it off and then turn it back on. It takes a moment to catch back up again. This has been a really popular compressor. It was designed to do 2 separate things. One, it compresses the positive and negative swing of the waveform independently. And that's really key to how it works. That means it generates second harmonic, and that means it generates a kind of warm tone and evens things out a little bit as far as the waveform is concerned. But what it was also designed to do is interleave compressors. It would have one compressor running on every other sample, and then a separate compressor that's not even connected between those samples. And that is because the waveform only exists as a factor of multiple samples being combined together. And a single sample has no meaning in PCM digital audio because the sound is reconstructed. It's like the samples that you get, especially as far as high frequencies are concerned, serve as kind of slalom posts or traffic cones that the waveform will go around, or even do more striking things entirely. Now granted, if you have a really low frequency waveform, it's going to stick pretty close to the samples, but the reconstruction is important to remember. Well, as it happens, one of the things that went down was this. Now, programmers will immediately see what I did there to horribly ruin everything. But does this make logical sense? It might make logical sense, but what it does to the program is something entirely different. This bug caused ButterComp to operate as simply the positive-negative compressor and not do its interleaving, because what happens when you do this is it seems to say, oh, if this is true, then do this, otherwise do something else. But instead, it is assigning true to that value and then going by that. It's exactly the same as if you hid the thing equals and said if true every time. So that was a silly bug. It's actually not in CStrip, but it is in the version of ButterComp, and oops, so ButterComp is actually simpler than we thought it was. Now that is not to say that it's bad, because it is simple sometimes is really good. I do a lot of stuff that is more simple. But ButterComp, squealy guitars versus full one. It does have a very smooth sound, but what you're hearing is only one of the interleaved things working on every single sample. The interleaved just doesn't work for the original ButterComp as it was released. This is a pretty popular plugin. People do like what it sounds like. But what I'm going to do now is show you essentially what happened, because I went to fix this, and then I also discovered that there was something else I could do as well, and that is take the speed, and I decided that the speed thing that's in CStrip didn't actually work for this because it wasn't relevant to what ButterComp itself does. But I was able to look at the output waveform of the whole compressor and go, if that output waveform is high, then the compression speed and the release speed is slightly slower. And that helps smooth out bassier waveforms, more dense waveforms. It kind of chills it out a little bit, and it allows it to react a little quicker when there's not that much going on. So it now has a little sort of auto-release thing going on in a very, very subtle way. And the result is like this. This is ButterComp. This is the new ButterComp2. Go back to the original one again. It'll take a while to dial in. You can hear that it sounds fine, but listen to sort of the ambience and the textures of the sounds. I can also do this with the dry wet, actually. There. Let's give it both. Then I'll move onward to something else that might be a little bit more, let's do Alien Kittens, just because Alien Kittens might be a little more challenging for a compressor to work on. Let's see what we get. Right now, this is ButterComp itself and not ButterComp2. It'll kick in. So there we have that. A little bit more air going on, a little more ambience. And now let's go back to regular ButterComp again. See what I mean? They're very similar, and they should be. They're the same basic idea, but this one's a little bit more muted, it's a little bit more flat. And then there's just that little more dimensionality and space in there. Now, what's making that happen are two things. One, ButterComp2 has fixed the dumb silly assign bug that I think it depends upon what you're using. I need to use an older compiler so that I can put plugins out for just about anything out there, and that's very important, so I don't actually have the facilities for checking for that, I don't think. The ButterComp2 has fixed that, so what you're hearing is the interleaving that I always intended to be there, which is the same that you get in CStrip, in the version of ButterComp that lives in CStrip. But you also have this slight adjustment of timing where the response time is a little bit slower when the output level is high. And that has an interesting effect also. For instance, I can show you this. If you are changing the dry wet, we got our compressed stuff here. If we include a little dry here, that is now affecting the response speed of the compressor, not just the output of the wet only. Anything you do with output or dry wet affects the response speed very slightly. So these controls that you can work with, like here, we'll push output up a little bit. And what that's going to do is it's slowing the response back. Don't worry about this overload because we've got it padded down using bit shift gain. So it'll get a kind of a little fuller, whereas if you need to pull the output back, like that, it will be just a little bit more floaty. It'll respond a little quicker. I think that it's more of an effect using the dry wet though, because dry wet is effectively allowing louder stuff through, or even quite a bit of it. What I can do is fool with this in this way. Let's crank the compressor all the way up. Then we have it stepping on it quite hard, because when you compress it that hard, it's kind of patting it down rather a lot. But then if we use the dry wet, that is cleaning it up a little bit, even while I also go to the dry wet. So it's having a subtle effect on the compressor signal. And the whole idea of that is to make all of these controls really responsive. Like we can go to this, and we can let loudness through. Now, one of the things about this is not necessarily one of your drum bus compressors. I'll demonstrate that as follows. This is no compression. Then it's almost like it doesn't even register that at all. ButterComp really wants to look at a full mix or something with much larger ranges of behavior. But we might be able to get a sense of what's going on. I'll turn it back up again. Oh, and it would help to have wet, all wet. Let's give that a try. So here is our all wet, and that's what dry sounds like. It's kind of like doing a compression thing. But this ought to give also a pretty good example for the difference between ButterComp and ButterComp2. I would say listen to the cymbals here. Stuff like that. Here's regular ButterComp. ButterComp2. Definitely a little more realism going on in the symbols there. And that's because it's interleaving rather than just running a single compressor on all of the samples. It's something that I use for a lot of different things, actually. And I'll turn this off for a moment. And essentially what's happening is it's not changing the sound of anything very much like that, but it's changing the general tone of everything a little. Like dry. And full wet, full cramp using ButterComp. But really, you're going to hear it more in something like Empty Pictures. Just some kind of full-bodied mix. Where here's your raw one. And then we turn it on. It'll start adapting and adjusting to things. And one of the things that happens is if you're trying to crank it to full compress, it'll start pushing it back down again. You want a more delicate setting, like 0.2 or something like that, to have it working with this sort of leveling factor going on. And you'll get a certain amount of glue factor there, but it's very clean. It's not going to mess things up very much at all. Let's give it 0.4. And again, back to ButterComp. Still sounds basically good, it still sounds basically right, but it just have more resolution on ButterComp2. It's just plain working better. So my hope is that people appreciate that. ButterComp 1 is still available if you want it or need it. Here, I can do something annoying and do a sine sweep, which is like this. That's some deep bass right there. And here's ButterComp. You can hear it's not doing buzzy artifacts or anything. You got to be careful with compressors because compressors can, in compressing a waveform, they can try to step on it as it comes forwards. This is a very clean sine tone coming through here. But now we'll switch over to ButterComp2. And as that adjusts itself to be fully engaged, I'm thinking it is just a hair even cleaner. I can show that, and then here's our dry, louder. And that is causing the compression to kick in on the sine wave, and you really hear like nothing else going on. Which I think I could probably demonstrate what it does sound like to have weird stuff going on. I think pop is quick enough to react that you'll get a sense of what's going on there. So I can turn ButterComp off for now, as I think I've demonstrated it, and Here we have super intense pop overdrive. Just trying to compress it so hard. And that's what it sounds like, having a little overtone on the sine there. Because it's much faster. Whereas, if we're using ButterComp, or ButterComp2 rather. Okay, so that should be enough. This is what you should have. ButterComp2 is, of course, free, like all of my stuff is free. All I would ask is that if it becomes a super vital plugin that you can't possibly do without, as if you would have bought it for the staggering price of $50, and got a permanent license for it for that $50, and the source code, which is not usually what you get from a plugin for the staggering sum of $50. And lastly, if you are not poorer than me, because if you're poorer than me, I just want to give this to you straight up. But here is ButterComp2. It's supported by my Patreon. And I think it'll do all the things that ButterComp1 did, only better. And it has that output control that people asked for. So I hope you like it, and thank you.